Hello guys, this is your Uncle Big Fish, and on this video we'll be discussing the Strength Poison build. Now this one is a request from a subscriber or from the comment section, and I just want to illustrate that before we get started. This video will pretty much talk about the full optimization of the build and how it works, and also how to get some of the items that you will need for this build. Be aware that there will be a lot of spoilers in this video, so if you haven't started playing till Forsaken Fen, you might not want to watch this video. Now, to get started, the idea for the build is actually quite simple. Now, this is probably one of the only weapons for strength that I see having an innate ability to inflict poison. This is gonna be the Hushed Saint's Halberd. Now, it scales very well with strength, so this is going to be pretty much our go-to weapon. It has a decent amount of poison buildup, and also it has pretty good strength scaling at C+. Once you get all the way to get the runes for it, it could go all the way to C+. Now, this weapon have high damage, it inflicts poison, and in order to build this character, we need to optimize that poison. And so we're going to be using the Bloodbane Ring. Now this is going to be probably your go-to build if you're going to be using a poison build-up set. Now to further boost this ring, we're going to be using the Pendant of Burden, which will deal additional damage for every status effect that you inflict on the enemy. Now this is actually quite strong in conjunction to how they synergize with one another. Because your weapon have innate poison buildup, you will also deal bleed buildup due to the Bloodbane Ring. And by having two status inflicted on the enemy, it'll further boost your damage because the pendant deals bonus damage for every status that you have on the enemy, which will further on make the damage much higher than it's supposed to be. Now to further this, we're going to be using the Rune of Atarix, or Atarux, or whatever it's called. And what it does is, this will further make you inflict more poison buildup. And this is actually quite interesting because poison deals a lot of damage in the long run, so you want to always have the poison inflicted on the enemy. And you will get this because on the two runes that you can socket into the halberd, it's going to be the strength for the first socket, and it's going to be agi for the second socket. Now this Atarux rune is going to be on that agi part, and so for the strength part there's a lot of options, but for me I would prefer dealing more posture damage by using this one. Now to be able to get the Rook rune, it's going to be a reward from drops, and you can get this by killing the Womb of Despair enemies, which will be this one on the screen right now. As for the Atarix rune, you can get it from drops as well, from the Shuja Strider enemies, or the one you can see on the screen. The basic moveset of this build is going to be an R1 into an R2 into a charged R2 and back into an R1. However, if you do have more investment on your endurance, you may be able to cast more R1s after the charged R2. Now, if you see here, there's a lot of those bluish aura that you saw on my character during the R2 and also on the charged R2. Now, that is going to be something that is caused by my Umbral Lamp, and that's going to be the eye socket that I'm using, or the Umbral Eye of Loesch. Now, this is actually one of the, if not the strongest Umbral Eye in the game currently, and what it does is pretty much whenever you're on this Umbral Eye, what's going to happen is you're going to have unbreakable posture during your charging animation, as you can see on the blue aura before, and also whatever damage you take during that charging animation, at least during the posture immunity, you will be able to get all the damage converted to withered health, which will then be replenished when your R2 lands on the opponent, because then when you hit your R2, you recover some of that withered health back to red effective health. So we've talked pretty much of everything regarding the build and why we use certain items. And I think to further explain how this works is when you hit something with charged attacks, you deal a lot more damage, and because you recycle your health a lot more, so you're able to hit an opponent a lot more. And that will also be able to give you a lot more longevity and also to have more opportunities to apply the poison debuff on the enemy while also dealing a lot of damage in the process. And because you're dealing so much posture damage, they will probably be open up to a grievous strike, which will then be able to buy you time for more of that poison to tick on the enemy. So this is actually a very powerful build, and I think the eye alone would make this build extremely powerful. I think that the idea behind the build is quite simple, and I think I'm pretty sure you guys will have a very easy time of making this work. To be able to talk about this a lot more thoroughly, you do need to be able to finish pretty much from beginning of the game until the Forsaken Fen. So you do need to be able to get to the Hush Saint to get the weapon, because the weapon is going to be a reward for offering the remembrance of the Hush Saint. And so, with this being done, you can go to Molhu, right there on the umbral of the Skyrest Bridge, and you can finally offer the remembrance for the weapon. As for everything else on the build, you can find it in this next section of the video. Enjoy! If there's something truly that we can bring home from all this, is that I think that this build is just extremely powerful. I think the idea behind the build, although relatively simple, is actually very devastating because this build alone, as I've tried, is just really strong in terms of offense and defense. The Umbral Eye gives you a lot of sustain, so you do have a lot of opportunities to hit enemies, and because you deal so much status debuff on the enemy, you actually inflict a lot of damage, like outward damage from bleeding and from poison, and because you do even more damage when those status are being applied, you just continuously pump damage over damage. And because you have the Umbral Eye, which really helps you trade, you'll always have chances where you can actually deal damage. Just talking about the Umbral Eye alone on the Vampire God build, it's just a very strong mechanic in the game. I think HP recycling is just super broken just in its own right. I'm not saying this in a bad way, I'm just saying that this is something that is in the game. I do believe that if it's part of the game, you do need to respect that the fact that it can be used. So I don't know if this is gonna get patched in the future just because of how strong this is, but just the ability alone is just simply too powerful in my opinion. There are a lot of ways that you can enable this to go further, like using a lot more intricate runes that you can get later on in the game, and using say like Melchior's ring for the other slot, but those rings are just too far off into the game that I don't think it's viable enough to put into this build, because this build is pretty much focused centered around you being able to get to this build as fast as possible. And I do leave some holes in the build, like say the other slot for the ring, I didn't really mention it, because I want to give you guys the idea of creativity. I want you guys to figure out things that I couldn't. I want you guys to test things out. Perhaps what I think might be wrong, perhaps what I think is right might not be. Perhaps you guys could find something genuinely better. And that's why I leave holes in the build, and I just give you guys straight out what I think the build should look like from its base form. I hope you guys learned something new in this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I really wish you guys would try this out, because I think this build is extremely powerful. I think everything else combined will just make this build extremely stronger. And if you guys are able to make this build even stronger than what I did here by adding maybe throwable items or perhaps another ring slot, let me know in the comment section down below, and do let me know if this build served you guys justice and made your runs a lot more fun. And that's it for me. Have a nice day, guys.